right, good evening everybody and welcome to the January 2024 Government and Legislative Affairs Update. My name's Adam White, and Facebook is so crazy. You get the camera adjusted in the preview and then you go live and it is nothing like what the preview was. So crazy. Anyway, Happy New Year to everybody, and we've got a few things to talk about as far as a government and legislative affairs update. So seeing quite a few folks showing up here on Instagram, and not seeing too many people on Facebook just yet, but we'll get folks tuning in when they're able. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and the one light that I had shining in my face went out, so I got some shadows now, but I can actually see what I'm going to read. So yeah, I think that'll work out just fine. So going through this list of stuff because I don't want to keep you too long. First, let me say thank you for folks reaching out and letting me know that you watch these updates. Besides letting me know that I'm not doing this in a vacuum, it's nice to know that folks appreciate the information that we're passing along. And it's important that you know what the Alaska Airmen's Association is doing on your behalf. So that's what I wanted to start off, thanking everybody for that feedback. And I want to remind everyone that while the updates are live on Instagram and Facebook, we do archive them on YouTube, and so you can go to the Alaska Airmen's Association YouTube channel and see all the past issues there. Something else you can look at when you're at YouTube is the deep dive that I did for 100 low lead and the issues that we're facing here in Alaska. Quite a few people have been watching that, and I've been getting a lot of positive comments. Actually, some folks in government have been letting me know that they have watched it and have appreciated that information and that data. So some good things there. Speaking of 100 low lead and the transition away from leaded fuel, the announcement was made public today in AvWeb, if you didn't see that announcement, that Phillips 66 and Afton Fuels are pausing their 100 low lead replacement program right now. There's not a lot of details out just yet about why or what's going on. There's some rumors and some reports that manganese was one of the metals that they were adding to their fuel product to try to help with the detonation issue. And it seems like, from the rumors anyway, and that's all they are, just rumors at this point, that there was some buildup, just like we get lead salt buildup with 100 low lead, that manganese was building up in their fuel and causing some problems. So the interesting thing is, and I had some questions about this early on when Phillips 66 mentioned that they were using manganese, is that manganese is also listed as a hazardous product by the EPA. So we get rid of one hazardous metal, lead, and replace it with another one. Now, manganese obviously is not as lethal and as poisonous as lead is. And actually there's a lot of comments and actually some research that the quantities of lead in aviation fuel, we have not seen a lot of the, well, if you were to have a higher concentration from other things like lead-based paints and other things that have been eliminated from our society many years ago, lead is a problem though. So that's some interesting news there with Phillips 66 and their partnership with Afton Fuels. Their test product has been put on pause. They were running a Lycoming engine in a test stand, and it had some problems. So, so that's an update on some of those issues. Some other things that are happening, some deadlines that are coming up. So, January 22nd is the deadline for the comment period for the Mosaic program of the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking for the FAA. Now, you may remember me talking about the Mosaic program. Just a little bit about that, just to jog your memory. It's basically having to deal with light sport aircraft and sport pilots. So it removes the arbitrary weight limits of light sport aircraft, and now it's basing it on stall speed instead, is the proposal. This allows heavier airplanes to qualify up to 3,000 pounds. So it also increases the maximum light sport aircraft stall speed from 45 knots to 54 knots is the proposal. It removes the V&E, the top speed limit, potentially permitting light sport aircraft to reach 250 knots. Eliminates restrictions on advanced features like retractable landing gear and controllable pitch props. Expands light sport aircraft categories to include helicopters and gyrocopters, which it has not done that up to this point. Under the proposal, it would allow IFR and night operations and would allow sport pilots to fly up to a 4-seat light sport aircraft, but only carry 1 passenger. So while it may have 4 seats, they would still be limited to themselves and 1 additional person. So that's the proposal in a very, very brief, watered down Cliff Notes version. The comment period has been extended, but January 22nd is now the deadline for that. I would encourage you to, if you're concerned about some of those things, if you think those are good ideas, to go online and just do a search for Federal Registry and Mosaic, and it'll pull it up in your search engine, and you can go through that process of filing a public comment. I do ask, however, if you do file a public comment, do me a favor, send me a copy of it. Several reasons why I ask for that. One, it helps me understand the concerns and the opinions of our members and the aviation industry to make sure that we as the Airmen's Association are accurately and appropriately representing your interest. It also helps me be able to track your comment through the process to make sure that it is, the phrase is duly adjudicated. The FAA does have to adjudicate all of their comments if they are reasonable, and so it kind of helps me track and make sure those things are actually taken care of. So when it comes to other deadlines, we've got some more deadlines. So the federal government continuing resolution expires on the 19th of January. So there is a possibility of another government shutdown, and we've talked about this a lot. Up till now, they just keep kicking the can a little bit further down the road. There is hope that there will be a budget through that process pretty soon. I'm not holding my breath on the 19th that they will be able to finalize this. I think it's going to be another short-term resolution that they're going to come up with. So there's a possibility that if the government shuts down, that the FAA will have to go into just critical mission mode, which means air traffic controllers will still work, key critical safety personnel will still be on the job. Some of those folks, however, while they are required to work, they will not be paid until all this is over and there's a new budget, and then they will get their back pay. But previous cases of this, there have been some long delays for some federal employees to get their paycheck. So it's pretty much a hardship on a lot of federal employees when this stuff happens. Now, a lot of folks are concerned, well, what about the FAA? Yep, that is a concern because the FAA is in the middle of a reauthorization process. The House has voted to pass that reauthorization and is now in the Senate. The Senate has kind of sat on it a little bit. To be honest with you, it's been used as some political leverage. But it sounds like they are wanting to get this done once and for all. Now, the FAA reauthorization extension has been pushed out to March 31st. So, however, if the government shuts down on the 19th, it's still the government shutting down. Now, the FAA is authorized to still exist up until March 31st. And again, there is hope that the Senate would act on that and get a full-on reauthorization passed. There is some conversations that they want to make it a longer-term reauthorization, so we don't have to do this quite so frequently. But there are some other rumors, and rumors coming out of D.C., you can take them for what they are, that some people are contemplating holding reauthorization hostage until after the presidential election. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's going to happen, but that rumor is floating around out there. And in politics, you never really know what's going to happen until the ink is dry on the president signing the bill. So that's what we're up against for that. Now, talking about state level government, you may have seen in the news that the Alaska state legislators went into session today for this legislative season. There are some pre-filed bills that are already in the system. I've been looking through some of those to kind of get a little bit of a head start. There's going to be a lot more bills filed now that the session has officially begun. The governor's budget, proposed budget, is floating around out there. Been looking through that and just trying to make sure that we stay ahead of any potential problems and be available to help educate and inform our state legislators and state level government on some aviation issues. I will once again be going to Juneau during the session. Usually I head down in February, but it looks like this year I'm probably going to be heading down in March to be able to participate in the Governor's Aviation Advisory Board. I am a member of that board, and we typically go down every year during the session, and that gives us a time to be able to help answer questions for the legislators and to make sure that the governor and DOT are understanding some key issues that are of concern for the aviation community. Now, the big issue that's facing the state when it comes to Department of Transportation and personnel is the pay. And we've talked about this in the past as well, that there's a pay gap between government, some of the pay gaps between working for the state versus working for private industry. And so what happens is people will go and work for the state of Alaska, get trained up, get some experience, and then go work for a private contractor, either on the slope or some other place as an equipment operator, and make substantially more money. And so it's hard to keep people when it comes to the snow removal, especially for Anchorage and Fairbanks International. It was such a problem that the governor authorized some emergency funding to be able to help boost their pay, to be able to keep some of those key personnel. But it is also a problem in rural Alaska to keep qualified employees for DOT to be able to maintain the aviation system that we have here in the state. So that's one of the key issues that are going to be talked about in Juneau, and I'm involved in that process, and so we'll keep an eye on that and an ear as to what's happening. Now you may ask, well, Adam, what does that really mean for us that fly off airport and all those things? Well, you don't always go off airport. My guess is that you would occasionally land at a state-owned and operated and maintained airport. Maybe you have to take off from a private strip and you go strictly off airport. But I'm pretty sure that you appreciate knowing that a state-maintained airport is close by if you need to use it. And so it's important that we maintain this infrastructure that we have, and it's difficult to do that with the cost, inflation and other things, equipment cost and supply chain issues. We all know that things are getting more and more expensive. So that's one of the things I'll be looking for and paying attention to happening in Juneau during this legislative session. So I'm going to talk just in the few moments we have remaining about something that is very interesting to me. I will admit that I probably am a little bit of a geek and maybe a nerd in some areas. I have a little bit of an engineering background, and numbers mean a lot to me. And that's one of the things I enjoy about aviation and about flying. We've got all the V-speeds and all the weights and balances and all the numbers. And while you can do a lot of things strictly by the book and by the numbers, even if you do that to your best of your ability, there's still some other skills and things that come into play. So that's one of the reasons why I love aviation. Now, when we start talking about aviation and we start looking at economics and state level issues, it gets a little, well, this is where you start getting a little nerdy. And I mean that in the best way, because this is exciting stuff. I get pretty excited talking about this. So I had Dr. Mike Jones, who's an economist at University of Alaska Anchorage, reach out to me several months ago and ask some just basic general questions about aviation. And we emailed back and forth. We talked on the phone a few times and helped him kind of understand Alaska aviation and just some basics. He was working on some projects dealing with food security. And we all know that the cost of living in the off-highway villages are very much inflated compared to on-highway system, even on the marine highway system. It's a little cheaper than some of the remote places that are only accessible by air. Now, there's some problems when it comes to food security about the cost of getting food and medicine out to the villages. And the state is a little concerned about that, trying to figure out what can we do to make this process better, what can we do to alleviate some of the pressure points. And this is where it gets very interesting. I've equated this to the butterfly effect in chaos theory. If you're familiar with that, the concept is that a small little change in a seemingly insignificant system results in a huge disruption in the larger system as a whole. And so where this plays into aviation and food security is most of the groceries and perishable items and mail go by aviation. Now, some of it's by freight, but most of it is bypass mail. And if you're not familiar with the bypass mail system, we do not have time to get into that here, but I encourage you to look up on the internet and study up a little bit about bypass mail. It's fascinating what that has done for our state. But if there's hiccups, if there's delays, if there's problems in that bypass mail timeline, it results in spoiled food. And boil it down to its simplest form. And so what Dr. Jones is looking at, and he's gone back and he's got access to a lot of data, he's been able to correlate seemingly unrelated things and show that they are directly dependent upon each other. And specifically, talking about Alaska Aviation infrastructure and how that impacts and affects and effects food and food security and food spoilage. And so he dug down deep. There were some pressure points. One of the things that we have been saying for a very long time as the Alaska Airmen's Association is that AWOS and ASOS stations being out of service or not getting all the data into the internet or not being available the way that you normally would do your pre-flight to get that weather information, that's a problem. It's a bigger problem for the 135 operators because looks like we've got a little bit of a connection problem there on Instagram, but they're back. Disruptions in weather observation systems causes a bigger problem for the 135 operators because they cannot take off unless they know what the weather is at their destination. And so if they can't take off, they can't deliver the food. And if they can't deliver the food, it stays there at their hub, at their office there in whatever hub village they're in, and sometimes it spoils. Sometimes it's on the edge of spoiling even before it gets there because of warehousing issues and other things. But Dr. Jones has been able to take a lot of data and demonstrate empirically with numbers that AWOS and ASOS outages directly impacts the quality of food, therefore the quality of life in the villages. He's been able to associate some numbers to that, monetary values, and actual food servings. Now, this is where I get really kind of nerdy with some numbers here. Looking at some of his data, that between 2018 and 2022, so that time frame, there were 1.3 million servings of food that spoiled because of pressure points and infrastructure issues in aviation here in the state of Alaska. That's big. That's actually kind of scary to be able to pinpoint that data. Now, what does this mean for us as the Alaska Airmen's Association and people who don't fly necessarily for a living but fly for recreational uses? These numbers is what Washington, D.C. will perk up and listen to. When you start talking about food security, you start talking about the health and social services, you start talking about people's inability to get medicine on a consistent basis and food spoilage because of transportation pressure points, that's something that Washington, D.C. can listen to and take to committees and advocate for and get more money and get more things written into bills so we can get some of these things fixed. So I'm excited. You probably can tell by my voice and the way I'm kind of animated about this, that Dr. Jones's research now has empirically shown and proven a direct correlation between infrastructure problems in Alaska and food security. And so his data is, he's still working on this project, but he presented at a meeting I chaired last week and he presented a lot of this stuff, and it's incredible what he's been able to do. So that's some of the fun and exciting things that I do for government affairs for the Alaska Airmen's Association, that it doesn't sound like it's impacting our membership right away, but if we have more reliable weather observations in more places in the state, we can make better decisions when it comes to flying. And that is what we're shooting for. That's our goal, is to make better decisions and have more data so that we can be more informed to make those good choices sooner and not have to go out and stick our nose in the weather to see if we can make it. So that's how it's beneficial for us as the Alaska Airmen's Association. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up because we're at that 20-minute mark. I want to remind folks that we are in the middle of our scholarship season. And if you have any interest in getting into the aviation industry, please go to our website, go to alaskaairmen.org and look at our scholarships that are available. We have a lot of scholarships, and there's more money coming in to be able to give away to people who are interested in a career in aviation. So I encourage you to go online, go to alaskaairmen.org and look at that scholarship application and pass that information on to anyone that you know that is interested in a career in aviation. While you're there, go look at the raffle plane for this year, and you can buy your tickets online for that. So I can't get away without saying that you need to buy your tickets for the raffle club. Progress is being made on that, and it is going to be an incredible airplane again this year. And your participation in that fundraiser helps fund my ability to be able to represent us in government legislative affairs. It helps the scholarship program. It helps the Next Gen program, where we get the youth involved and encouraged and excited about aviation. It's what helps fund the Alaska Airmen's Association beyond what your membership dues are able to accomplish. So thank you for your membership. If you're not a member, also go to our website and find out some more about what you can do to be a part of the largest aviation membership organization based in Alaska. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Go to our website for more details and more information. You can find out how to reach out and contact me there, or you can reach out through private message here through social media. So thanks for paying attention, and thanks for all the feedback. Thanks for all the folks letting me know about issues that you know about that I may or may not know about. So much of what I find out about is because of you, and I appreciate that communication back and forth. So with that, I'm going to say good night and fly safe, make good choices, and enjoy the winter. We'll talk to you next time.